But this frequency of the mind is what we're working with, this angle of it in this Kriya for mastery, meditation for mastery. Because when we can bring the level of the frequency of the thought to this space, then it can be in silence, it can be in stability, and we can hold that. That raises the frequency of all of our being. We have not just the physical body, but all of these energetic bodies that support us, and their frequency gets charged as well, and gets risen as well. The only other way, that's the fastest way to hold that frequency of our mind, is through mantra. Right? Mantra, bani, prayer, these forms of recitation also take the place of the thoughts of the mind and start to put in this higher frequency. So we're vibrating and resonating at a much higher frequency, and we can sustain that. The more we do that, that's why they say jap, recite, repeat. Repeat it over and over and over and over, again, because the more we do the repetition, the more that starts to create a habit in the frequency of our mind, in the frequency of the thought pattern, and the quality and the capacity for what we're holding in our presence becomes much higher. Mind. It will help you raise the frequency of the mind, and it will plant the seed of the Guru Mantra of Waheguru into your subconscious mind, so that starts to inherently change the frequency and the quality of your thought pattern. It's not that you won't think things it's not that you won't think things that are crazy and bad or weird or strange, because your mind has its own energy, your mind has its own release of thought.
Waheguru, 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 Waheguru,
time I made, when I learned this Kriya actually, there's a concept called Simran, which means constant remembrance of a mantra, right? Of the name of God, of some name of God. So I chose this mantra, Waheguru, and I said, I'm going to always recite Waheguru in the back of my mind, always. No matter where I am, walking through the street, sitting in a movie, talking to my friends. I was a crazy teenager, so now you can see. Doing all of these weird things, right? I said, I'm going to do this. I'm committing to this. And so I started, and I would remember silently. I would remember for an hour, and then I would forget for 2 days. And then I would remember for a week. And then I would remember for most of one day. And it was this cycle, right? It's not that I could always latch onto it. It's very difficult to do. But I was going through the motions of trying. And it came to a point where I thought, it's not doing so much. I don't really understand. I didn't understand this concept of higher frequency of thought and what it could do when it's rooted in there. So, I was expecting a miracle. I was expecting to be reading minds and flying and levitating and seeing through walls and whatever kinds of funny things that your mind can tell you, should be happening. And I had the great opportunity to have an audience with Sri Singh Sahib, with Yogi Ji, and I was sitting there with about 10 people. And I was in the back in kind of one side, and he was in his chair in front of us. And he was speaking to someone over on this side. So he was looking, his head was over at someone else. And I was bored, I'll tell you, frequently. This happened. He was talking to them. My mind was turned off. And I said, what about that thing I'm trying? Waheguru, Waheguru. So I started Waheguru, Waheguru, Waheguru in my mind. Waheguru. No sooner than about 10 seconds, he stopped abruptly what he was saying, looking at this person over here, turned straight to me, locked his eyes on me and leaned forward in his chair and said, Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. Same rhythm, same tone that I was doing in my own brain. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe, was this really happening? And he just kind of smiled and turned back to the other person and started talking again. And I never said anything. He never said anything. But what happened was I understood that even if I didn't feel the frequency of this power of recitation, even silently in my own mind, other people could. It was impacting the frequency of my thought and my projection because he felt it. Someone who's sensitive, someone who's in that space had the possibility to very clearly feel and recognize that there was something happening there. And that changed my whole direction of that. I was dedicated after that. I'm doing this every second, all day. I'm doing my best. I was re-inspired and re-encouraged to try and to practice this kind of recitation of remembrance.